The monitoring scope. Monitoring project scope. This is the step where we try to find out how much work was accomplished. We also need to look at if there are any changes in the scope and if the work meet the quality specifications. Most of the scope that we identified in the WBS will need to make sure that we are accomplish them, that we're completing them within the schedule and the budget available, and also identify if there are any changes, either additions or modifications to the scope, and also the process and how we're making sure that the activities and the work we're doing meet the quality that we're identifying early in the project. So the objective of monitoring scope is to ensure that the work meets the specifications of the project. And for that, we're going to look at two elements. The first one is called scope verification, and then the second is called scope control. Scope verification is the formal acceptance of the completed project work, either if they are goods or services. It involves the inspection of the deliverables. Goods and services meet the quality requirements, and there is a process of approval by stakeholders or beneficiaries, management, or the donor. The idea that it's a process that we make sure that what we are delivering, what we're completing, meets the requirements that were specified in the project plans. Scope verification is during the moment where the team members they report on the progress and deliverables of each assigned activity. So all those work elements that we have in the WBS, when we identify that work, we need to make sure that the work has been completed and that has been accepted, and also that meets the quality requirements. So that will be the source of information that a project manager will use to first get an idea where they are, but then will be a process of verification, and there can be some reviews of the work to make sure that what we say that is on paper is actually happening in reality. Scope control is another important element during this phase. It's not necessarily to control changes, but to make sure that all those changes are contributing to the project goals. So we look at how we can manage the changes. We also look at an analysis of the impact to the project constraints of schedule, budget, and then also quality. And it requires a formal approval by management and or the donor. The idea is that we need to get a good handle about all those little changes that occur in the project. And we have a term for that. It's called scope creep. Scope creep means that it's the expansion of a project outside of the planned activities. It's also the uncontrolled changes or added objectives or work to the scope of the project. And even the small incremental changes in the project scope. And that is a feature that happens many times in project, is that those little changes that are being added to the project, eventually they add up. And they can have an influence in terms of how we have access to the resources of the schedule and our budget. So we need to be careful about how we manage scope. Changes are good, but we need to have a good control in how we're implementing those changes into the project. Remember that the idea is that we manage our constraints. We use this triangle to represent the dependencies that exist between scope, budget, and the schedule. The idea is that when we make any changes and we, for example, we add the scope, there is going to be an impact, meaning that now in order to do that extra scope, we need to increase our budget and we increase our time. So now we have a new triangle, and now the quality is going to be maintained. If we don't do that, then the quality will suffer, meaning that they're asking us to do more without giving us the time and the funds to do it. So we need to be careful about how we approach that process and make sure that for every changes in the scope, we make sure that we have the resources and the time to do them. Here's another representation about the importance of managing the scope. It's that there is a cost to those changes, and it's dependent on the time. So early in the project, all those changes that may happen, their cost is not that significant because we haven't done much work. There is a lot of opportunities to modify the plans and make the required changes, and the cost is going to be minimal. What happens when we have changes later in the project? Well, the cost is going to be higher because we already have done a lot of work. There's going to be a lot of commitments in terms of purchases for goods and services, and making any changes means that we need to redo the work, meaning that we need to pay more, and maybe we don't have that much money because we're at the end of the project. So it's important, if there are going to be any changes to the project, they usually are managed within the area where we have more access to those changes and we can make those modifications earlier. The other element that we need to look for when we are monitoring our scope is quality control. And quality control is the use of techniques and the activities that compare actual quality performance with the goals and defines appropriate action in response to any quality problems. And as we start making progress in our project, we start getting information of what we're doing, and we can see some of the activities are producing the desired results, but there are going to be some of them that they don't. So we need to be able to look at those problems, see what happened, why we're having that problem. And quality control is mostly looking at after we do the activities, after we have completed. So we do a review. And that is a process of also getting acceptance from the beneficiaries. Beneficiaries will not accept something that is not working, and the donor will not pay for something that is not producing the intended results. So it's important that we monitor that we make sure that the activities are producing the results based on the level of quality. There are going to be some tools that will help us do that: the cause and effect diagrams, the Pareto charts, and the control charts. The cause and effect diagrams, also known as fishbone diagrams, because kind of look like a fish with the bones. And it's a simple tool. Basically, we know we have a problem, there's a quality error. Then we try to list the categories for which we have that problem. And depending on the type of project, depending on the sector of the project, the categories could be different. But it's a way to organize. It's a session where you brainstorm with your team and you try to identify what could be the defects, where are the causes for those errors. And based on that information, you start brainstorming and you start listing all those problems or those causes that could cause that problem. And that helps you narrow your actions and try to identify the causes for that problem, and then try to find a solution for them. The other tool that is also used in quality is called the Pareto chart. And what is that? Is that we might have a list of all the errors or problems that we have in our project, here represented by letters from A to T. But the idea is that we need to focus on those that are mostly around 80% of all the problems. Why? Because by doing that, representing this little group, and sometimes this group is in a small range, you can focus on those problems, and by solving, you are able to solve about 80% of your problems. And that gives you a good start, rather than spending all your time and effort on the remaining 20% that may not create or they don't have that much significant problems to your project. It is a chart that helps you prioritize where you want to work with all the problems that you might have. That is, that focus on those little group of problems, but they together represent 80% of the problems that are causing inequality. The other tool are the control charts. And here we see an example of training sessions, 15 training sessions in a project, and the results of the test after those training sessions. And the project has identified some upper and lower limits to measure the quality. And as the data starts coming, you can see the results of the average results on the test. And there are two that are beyond those limits. When we know that there are low, something is too low, there is a problem. It could be that the students are not able to understand, the material was too difficult. There is a quality problem there. Maybe we forgot to give them some additional information during the training. When they took the test, they didn't know, so they failed. In the other extreme, in this example, all the students are getting very good grades. And that's another quality problem, because it could have been that the information that was provided to them, or the students we selected, were for a higher or more complex course than the one we designed for. So obviously everybody's going to get a good grade, but the idea is that these limits help us identify where we're having problems with quality, so that we can take the corrective actions and bring back the project within those standard areas that we know is what we designed the training or the activities in the project. Again, these are basic tools that, based on the information that you have, will help you identify early where you have problems with the quality and take corrective actions before they become a major issue to the project.